Mental health and psychosocial support, or MHPSS, has become a vital part of humanitarian assistance for communities affected by crisis. But here's the uncomfortable truth. While we focus on helping those impacted by disasters, the well-being of those on the front lines, our first responders, healthcare workers and humanitarian teams, is often neglected. Now, according to very basic numbers, 1 in 5 humanitarian workers suffers from depression, anxiety or PTSD, and the stigma around mental health leaves many of them to cope alone. So the question is, who is taking care of the caregivers? Shortly, I join Dr. ELIZA CHEUNG, Technical Advisor for the Psychosocial Center at the International Federation of Red Cross and Red Crescent Societies, IFRC. She's also the lead of the Asia Pacific Mental Health and Psychosocial Support Collaborative. We discuss the issues surrounding mental support to first responders. I'm RATNAM, and this is The Nation on Banama TV. Hi, and thanks for staying with us. Joining us virtually from Hong Kong to shed light on this issue is Dr. ELIZA CHEUNG, Technical Advisor for the Psychosocial Center at the International Federation of Red Cross and Red Crescent Societies, or IFRC, and lead of the Asia Pacific Mental Health and Psychosocial Support Collaborative. Dr. ELIZA, thank you very much for taking time off and also for doing this. I'd like to begin here. Mental health and psychosocial support, or MHPSS, short for that, is no longer a new issue, and in fact, it has become part of the humanitarian assistance provided for communities affected by emergencies in recent years. Now, drawing from the experience of the Red Cross and Red Crescent, what are the main mental health issues affecting staff and volunteers working in disasters and emergencies? And to add to that, do you have any personal experience to share? Doc?
Thank you. Thank you so much, Jared, to having me for this program. And it's a very important topic for us to discuss about the mental health and psychosocial impact onto our carers, our humanitarian workers. As you have mentioned, you already have mentioned about the figures, that the number of humanitarian workers being affected by various kinds of mental health and psychosocial support needs. From our experience, we can see that for humanitarian workers working in disasters affected area, in conflicts, there are multiple stressors. Not only that they are facing a lot of adjustment in their life and also in the work. Sometimes it's very heavy workload for them, and also for some of the work, or even most of the work, that involves a certain degree of safety or security risk that they also have to bear with during when they are providing humanitarian support to the community. And Jared, you mentioned about any personal experience. I would love to share one example. Back in 2014, I was deployed to Liberia, West Africa, to respond to the Ebola outbreak at around July, August. Back then, it was the beginning of the exponential growth of the number of cases affected by Ebola. And among the humanitarian workers, I would say, we can also definitely see a lot of them are so worried about themselves getting infected, and also the fact that they may also bring the virus home after finishing the humanitarian work in the community. So I would say this is definitely one very important issue for us to look at. To some people, taking care of oneself, the ability to manage stress is something good to have. But in situations like providing humanitarian support, it could also be a matter of life and death. Because if you can't really take care of your own stress, but you're in the community, for example, our safe and dignified burial teams in the Ebola outbreak, they are crucial. They are essential in the entire disease outbreak control. If they can't take care of themselves, engaging in various kinds of behavior, which could put themselves or the team member at risk, it could also mean that they may get the Ebola virus, or they may also infected the virus to their family members or the team members. So that's why it's very important for us to take care of the carers themselves.
Right, but looking at what you're talking about now, I guess when it comes to what's common and why, what is usually the specific issues? Do they deal a lot with anxiety, PTSD, or burnout?
I would say the majority of them is because of the various stressor. And for normal people, if we are encountered with different kinds of stressors, we also have different kinds of stress reactions, and these are normal. We do not want to say that a lot of them will develop disorders or clinical, pathological, psychological disorders. It's because a lot of them, a lot of us, we also have the resilience for us to bounce back from that stressors in work. But of course, to a smaller number of people in a community, maybe they will also develop long-term psychological conditions, like what you have mentioned, depression, anxiety, or really after encountering some critical incidents, a small proportion of them may also develop post-traumatic stress disorder.
Now, I guess one of the other problems is, how do you think the mental health issues of humanitarian workers evolve over time, especially if they are repeatedly deployed to crisis situations?
Of course, for some humanitarian workers, if because of their multiple deployments, that could be a process for them actually to learn how to cope with various stressors in the field. It could be relating to work stress, relating to working with different people coming from different cultures or backgrounds, or responding in some situations where they witness and also exposed to a lot of human suffering. It could be a process for them to learn step by step how to cope with different kinds of stressors. It could also be in another way to say, it could also add on to the exposure to, for example, the violence that could also have a negative inverse impact to their mental well-being. But of course, this is very important for the organization, like the IFRC, the International Federation of Red Cross and Red Crescent Societies, that as an organization, we also provide the support to our carers, because this is the duty of care that the organization can provide to our frontline staff and volunteers. We always use this analogy. It's like someone who is getting onto the plane, and when you hear the safety announcement, they're always saying that if there's any turbulence and the air mask is dropping, please put it on yourself before putting it onto someone else, because you can't really help other people if we don't take good care of ourselves. I think this analogy also applies in our mental health and psychosocial well-being, because as a humanitarian worker, we are supposed to provide support, care, and to bring hope to the affected community. And that's why it's important for us to be able to take care of oneself first.
Right. From your point of view, do these issues similarly affect the frontline health workers, including medical doctors, nurses, paramedics, and also ambulance drivers, who often encounter situations of medical emergencies or situations of this nature?
Yes, you are correct. There are also research showing that for health and medical personnel or frontline responders in a community, they are at higher risk of developing or suffering from mental health and psychosocial conditions. I would say it's particularly because of the type of work that they are doing. They are facing life and death, dying situations. They may also have to respond to or take care of the family and friends, the loved ones of the patients or of the deceased. This is a really stressful work. And not to mention about the long working hours. And sometimes the work shifts also make them very difficult to relax or to wind down after shifts. So that's why in the long run, what you mentioned, like burnout, may also happen.
Right. If you're just joining us on the program, we're currently speaking to Dr. ELIZA from IFRC, and we're talking about people on the front lines and the work they do, and how much does this affect them. Having said that, is there a difference? And I'm just asking because I've done some volunteer work, but not enough to say that it traumatizes me. Now, medical emergencies versus humanitarian disasters, are there different emotional tolls? And this is we're just working off the same question, the same answer you were giving me a while ago.
But you are right, Jared. Of course, the exposure of like the suffering could be different if we are talking about humanitarian workers or if we are talking about like medical personnel. But sometimes when we say that somebody would really succumb to some psychological pathologies or disorders, we are not just looking into the exposure, but at the same time, we are also looking into the internal personal capacities of individuals to cope with various kinds of stressors. And usually the results, the mental health impact is the balance of two things: the exposure onto the stressors or the stress level, and at the same time, how much we are able to cope with or to respond to all these different kinds of stress. So that's why in our support to the humanitarian workers, of course, as an organization in general, we need to have a very comprehensive structure and mandates to support our staff and volunteers. At the same time, being able to provide the appropriate trainings to them to enhance their capacity to respond to stressful situations would also be important. And it's not just individual humanitarian workers' responsibilities. We also want to make sure that managers, operational heads, they are also equipped with the capacity to support their staff members, because a lot of time when the frontline staff and volunteers encounter stressful situations, they probably wouldn't go to the counselors or psychologists at once, but they will discuss all these issues with the line managers, with their head of the operations. So that's why it's important for the managers to equip with the skill set to also support the staff and volunteers. One of the tools that we mentioned is called the psychological first aid. This is something that in the Red Cross Red Crescent movement, this is also one of the tools that we always mentioned, or one of the essential skill set that we want to emphasize everybody should learn. So the concept is just like physical first aid. We are not expecting people who have medical background, like only the one with medical background, to learn physical first aid. We want everybody, all walks of life, people coming from all walks of life, to learn physical first aid, so that in times of some accidents or crisis, you are able to provide first aid to someone who need it, or you can provide first aid to make sure the wound wouldn't got worsen. So similar concept to the psychological first aid is that we hope that more and more people coming from different professions can also learn these skill sets, these essential interactions, ways of interactions, so that we are able to provide the basic support to people if they encounter some critical incidents. And more importantly, we are not doing any further harm, like re-traumatizing somebody who just went through some critical incidents.
Now, taking a look at what you've told me, Dr. ELIZA, I think one thing that comes to mind here is training. We talk a lot about training these days, but when it comes to training with regards to where you are in the IFRC, does training take on a form of giving a picture to those going to places that are really horrible, giving them a good picture as to what they're going to encounter, as opposed to seeing what they see?
I would say the training itself is really enabling our supporter to provide the appropriate care to the people affected by the critical incidents or crisis. Say, for example, if someone just encounter like typhoon or floodings, we have been facing a lot of this climate-related crisis in the Asia-Pacific region recently. So how are we going to support the person whose house is being flooded or family members gone missing? Instead of focusing a lot onto their disaster experience, it's even more important for us to focus on the here and now, how we can cope with the day-to-day lives now with the losses in their lives, or maybe they need to get more information about the different humanitarian aids being distributed in the community, or they may access to various kinds of services For example, the Restoring Family Link service that the IFRC, that the Red Cross movement have been like providing. So that kind of information would be very much important. And in order to do so, in order to link them to this different support network, is first of all important for the helper to be able to listen proactively to the needs and the concerns of the individuals, and at the same time also to observe if there are any immediate threats that the individual may put himself, herself, or the community into. So identifying these different like risk factors, listen to the person proactively, and linking to the community that can provide the support would be the basis of what we mentioned of psychological first aid would encompass. So these are some of the potential areas that our helper can support the communities with the skill set that we provide them with.
Right. Let's talk about best practices. What are the best practices to tackle these MHPSS issues affecting humanitarian workers and also people on the front lines?
Yes, and when you mention about the best way for us to address this issue, I would say we need a more systematic way looking into this mental health and psychosocial support needs. Is, as I mentioned, we cannot just rely on individuals' personal resilience or coping mechanism to respond to all these very intense stressors. We also need the organization to have the structure to support them. For example, the entire cycle of work, when we start recruiting our staff and volunteers, what are some of the mechanisms for us to ensure that they are well informed about the potential stresses that they encounter in their lives? After they are being recruited, do we have the appropriate and sufficient trainings to equip them to do their work? And in times of during the deployment or in times of the mission, when they encounter some critical incidents, do we also have the protocol or the various kinds of support to support the individual and their family members in this kind of some crisis? And even after like post-mission, after deployment, do we also have the system in place to support them? Some of the local Red Cross and Red Crescent national societies have been organizing various kinds of support ways. Maybe I can also say one example. In Australia, they are also having this independent check system. So after deployment, the frontline responders, they will also receive a call, an anonymous call from the headquarters, calling them to check in on them within a month after the deployment to see if they have been sleeping well, if they have been like eating well, adjusting well back to their original life. At the beginning, a lot of people would be saying, oh, I don't need this kind of support. I'm doing fine. I'm doing good. But eventually, like a lot of them also like have this very discussion, in-depth discussion with the supporter. It may not necessarily be that they have any sorts of issues, but the fact that they feel being listened to, being cared for, is also a very supportive way that they feel the organization is providing to them. So this kind of mechanism should be in place, especially in the case when people may have some stigma towards like help seeking. They may feel weird to go out and seek help, to talk to some counselors or psychologists. If you have a system in place that everybody has to go through it, it's like mandatory, it's a normal procedure, then people's level of stigma would be reduced, and they feel that this is something very normal for a helper, for a humanitarian worker to seek support from someone else.
Right. Now, as a clinical psychologist who has also been deployed on humanitarian missions, and I'm coming to you back again, what were the main challenges you faced in providing MHPSS, whether to local people affected by disasters or emergencies, or to the humanitarian workers responding to those emergencies?
I think I would say, because in IFRC or in the Red Cross movement, We are very lucky because we always have our local Red Cross and Red Crescent societies to work together with. And by means of providing mental health and psychosocial support in affected communities or populations, we always work together with the national societies who have always been in the community, speak the same language, and coming from the same cultural background. So that's why we work like hand in hand, designing the program, implementing the program, monitoring the program together. So to make sure that the support that we are providing really addressing the needs of the community. But I would say in some contexts, of course, the stigma or the perception towards mental health and psychosocial support could be one of the challenges that we face when we are providing various kinds of programs or interventions in the community. But I would say this challenge is also changing now, especially after COVID. People's awareness towards mental health and psychosocial well-being has been enhanced. We know that this is one essential component of one well-being. We always say there's no health without mental health. And it's not just our slogan, but I can also really feel that when we are providing support to the local communities, people are also starting to have this mentality. And it gives us like bigger space for us to work on our program and to promote the well-being of the communities by working together with them.
Now, in high stress situations like where the world is now at this point, what self-care practices do you recommend to staff and volunteers? I mean, people not only within the Red Crescent and Red Cross, what do you call that? Circles, people outside who are trying to learn from the Red Crescent and Red Cross. What kind of advice do you have for volunteers to maintain their emotional and physical health while they're out there doing their bit for society?
That's right. I think one very important element is to maintaining or ensuring you have the strong support network. Because we are only like individuals, sometimes the different kinds of stresses are really putting us onto a level that we may not be able to just use our own internal resilience or capacity to cope with. It's always good to have this support network to support one another. So one of the strategies that we have been advocating also within our Red Cross movement is to using this buddy system. It's a peer support. For example, in your team, apart from your close colleagues that work very closely together with, you also have this buddy who you trust and you can share your distress with. Because sometimes we realize that we may not be the first person awareing that we have some stress reactions. Sometimes it's our buddies. They are the one who first identified, oh, this person has changed a little bit. Maybe the sleep pattern, maybe the behavior of the person has changed. It's good to remind one another about the importance of self-care. And also, even if you feel like not everyone could be like a professional or providing professional counseling to one another, just having somebody you trust who can listen to you when you are distressed, or even to do something that you enjoy, that you can do it together, is already a strong support to one another. So maintaining a strong support system would be one of those. At the same time, I would say also to identify the different strategies that work for you, because stress coping is something that is not like one formula fits all. You need to identify something that is useful, that works for you, so that you can practice whenever, wherever you need. So, for example, for myself, practicing some mindfulness exercise, doing meditation really helps me to calm and also to settle my emotions, and also giving me a little bit of space to process the feelings. For other people, they may find it like writing helps to process feelings. Writing your journal or writing some notes or like letters to loved ones would work for them. So identify something that works for you is very important. And also to be open, to be willing to try different methods. Because sometimes, because of different types of stressors, you may also need different types of coping mechanisms or coping strategies. So try some physical exercise, try something that you can practice indoors if going outside is not feasible in the situation. So be flexible and be open.
Dr. ELIZA, thank you so much for shedding light on such an urgent issue. Now, to policymakers and decision makers, ensuring the mental health of frontline workers is not just a moral duty, it's a critical factor in achieving the Sustainable Development Goals, especially SDG 3. Good health and well-being cannot get any more simpler than that. Think about it. If we can't even take care of those on the front lines, how exactly do we expect to build a resilient and sustainable future for everyone? This is a challenge that demands your immediate attention and action. I'm GERARD. Thank you for watching The Nation on Bernama TV. Take care. Bye-bye.